Good evening, everyone. Calling the April 8th Norfolk School Committee meeting to order. I'll start with reading our mission statement. The Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Can I have a roll call, please?
Peter Schwalder.
Lauren Davis, Medora Champagne.
Lisa Sheldon.
Victoria Santana. Here, good.
And it looks like we have one public comment tonight. We always welcome public comment for the community to come up and share their thoughts. If there is just 4 or fewer people speaking, you have a total of 3 minutes to speak. So you can come on up, grab your chair.
You want me to?
Thank you.
Grab one. I'm Mary Kate Pelser. I live at 9 Thomas Mann Circle. And first, thank you, of course, all of you for the work that you do for our school community. I'm here to speak to you tonight to celebrate the incredible work being done at HOD by Mrs. Sharon LaValle and to advocate for increased support in the HOD library. Library is many of our kids' favorite special of the week. Mrs. LaValle runs 5 classes a day in which she promotes our public library, delivers a creatively crafted, highly relevant lesson, and orchestrates time to check out books. Additionally, she procures and curates timely collections to share with students and staff, supports teachers in their classroom needs, organizes enriching author visits, maintains the catalog, the physical books and shelves, and any relevant accounting, including the administrative challenges that accompany the increase in transient students this year. And the list goes on and on. This year, Mrs. LaValle is running the library without the support of an aide. And thanks to Nikki McKay, who volunteers herself 1 whole day a week and has coordinated and trained a small group of us who volunteer 1 hour each week, we're able to reduce some of the workload, but it is not enough, and I believe it is not sustainable. The work is specialized enough that volunteers need to understand the workflow software, record keeping, and a bit about how sales operates. And volunteered help needs to be routine, as Mrs. LaValle depends on it. Facing another difficult year, the 0.5 FTE aid in the HOD library is on the list of budget items to be restored. But if this restoration is not in the near future, then I urge you to find a more sustainable solution. The work being done in the library is so critical as it affects every child in the building, providing them the chance to joyfully apply the literacy work they do in their classrooms. They work every day learning to read, and with Mrs. LaValle, they learn to love to read. So please prioritize that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If there's no further public comment, we're moving to correspondence, which we have none. Moving on to the chair report. We have a gifts to approve yet again from our PTO for a grant for $2,474.99 to HOD and $727 for Freeman Kennedy for a total of $3,201.99. On the back, you can see that at Freeman Kennedy, the grants went towards jumbo magnetic fraction bars, headphones, classroom headphones, pencil grips, sneaker lace tying materials, and bouncy bands. And then at HOD, cause and effect toys, tabletop activities, sensory supports, speech therapy, articulation trinkets, We Thinkers book bundle, balance beam blocks for kids to create their own path structures, Aperture Tier 2 intervention package, and Grade 2 math facts lab. So I would be looking for a motion to approve the PTO grants as listed.
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion?
Big thank you.
Thank you again to our PTO. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next in your packet, I have a resolution. Last time at the school committee meeting, we talked about how Chapter 70 funding, as it's currently calculated, is not meeting the needs of districts. And the governor's budget actually included an increase of about 6% for education, but there are 232 school districts like ours who are not seeing the benefit from that. And Dr. Alardi, if you remember the chart that she showed of districts like ours who are falling below the state average at an increasing rate. Though there was a Ways and Means Committee meeting about 2 weeks ago where this topic was brought up and discussed. And so the Massachusetts Association of Regional Schools, the Massachusetts Association of Superintendents, and the Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials, and the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and the American Federation of Teachers collaborated to develop a comprehensive K-12 funding proposal really aimed at circuit breaker reimbursements, regional school transportation, and the recalculation of the Chapter 70 formula, which would directly benefit us, so we are not cutting things like library, like we just heard. And you've been on the budget more than I have, and every year is just a hard budget year because the way Chapter 70 is calculated is just not keeping pace of what we need. There was another Ways and Means hearing today, and I talked to Representative Vaughn. If you remember, I invited him to this meeting, but there was a meeting in Boston today, and he said there were just hours of testimony from people from communities like ours advocating to the state that what is happening is not working. I also, in response to your suggestion, called masks and spoke with Glenn and said what our school committee's doing is there some centralized advocacy we could be doing. He said, not really, but there is a resolution, which is what you have going around, that is saying we support these funding initiatives because all the pressure right now is being put on the municipalities and towns like ours don't have a huge commercial tax base, and the residents are feeling it, and the schools aren't getting what they need. So the resolution in front of you just says that we, as a school committee, support these initiatives for, like I said, the circuit breaker reimbursements, regional transportation, inflation of Chapter 70, which would directly benefit us. So I wanted to put this in front of you all to see if there was interest in going forward and doing a formal vote to support this. We would then send the resolution in to the governor's office, again to our reps. Mass did say the best way we can advocate is by talking to our reps, which we're already doing. But I think just having it formalized and in writing and just continuing the conversation and adding to the long list of schools and towns that are saying this is a problem would be beneficial. So I would be looking to aim for a motion to vote to approve this resolution in a show of support for what they're advocating for.
I move to, as a committee, support the resolution that is listed as Exhibit 2.
I'll second that. I appreciate, all the time that's gone into, everybody on this committee who's been involved with it, Lisa and, our representatives in the state government, whatever we can do to advocate, for what we need. It's been painful.
Thanks for mentioning what Rep. Vaughn had to say in the meeting today. I know you reached out to Senator Roush as well. Has she had any perspective or?
She also has 2 bills on the table, forming a committee to re-examine this. I only spoke to Representative Vaughn because I think he was at the meeting today, so
Yeah.
he had a live update.
Yeah.
Both of them said that hearing from school committees is helpful though, and the best way to advocate. Senator Roush said we could also submit testimony if we wanted to on her specific bills.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious what the comments were as well in terms, I'm sure supportive overall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Right, so is there any further discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Did you have any additional comments on?
No, I just think, as you said, this funding proposal, the MASS, the Mass School Business Association, MARS, the regional school districts, have been studying the issue for a long time and really trying to formulate what would be most impactful. And I think this also strongly affects Kingsborough as a regional school district. The regional transportation has been a classic issue in terms of funding, equitability, as well as circuit breakers. So I think this voting in support of the recommendations of those groups that have studied this in depth would benefit not just us, but our regional partners as well as people. So, support that. All right, first up tonight, we have a third quarter budget update, so I'll turn it over to Marion Goodwin, who will walk you through where we stand currently on budget.
Sure, good evening. I'll walk you through quarter three. Honestly, there's not a whole lot of change from quarter two, so we'll go through this pretty quickly and respond to any questions you might have. You can see on the first slide, here's our original approved budget in the amount of $15,565,080. That amount was amended in November with the town allocation to $15,734,169. Going through district administration, I am projecting an adjusted balance of $3,427 to be left at the end of June. We will be reclassifying some expenses for administrative expenses to our SAC account for the work that our office does to support this program. Relative to instructional services in the 2000 series, again, some slight changes here, looking at an adjusted balance of negative $66,375. Comments haven't changed, same things apply as they did back in December. The curriculum adoption, the numbers include the curriculum adoption, the non-resident tuition, which is a one-time funding only, and then $108,000. The new grade 1 that we received additional funding for from Chapter 70 for $69,000 and change. And then we have 2 additional EL paras that are supporting our students. In the 3000 series for student services, I'm looking at a deficit balance of $174,718. We added a bus for transportation. There was additional students, special education students that are being transported as well. And our cost sharing for transportation has significantly increased for transporting homeless students. In operations and maintenance, that's where you'll see a balance of $126,870. We will also be reclassifying some custodial expenses to SAC and school lunch for the amount of time that custodians support those programs. The fixed charges haven't changed at all in terms of insurance and contractual benefits, so a slight balance left there in the amount of $3,180. And in our programs with other districts in the 9000 series, we are looking at a deficit of $120,217. We had some additional expenses in that area this year that were significant. I will add that we have applied for additional circuit breaker extraordinary relief, which I'll talk about in 2 slides or so, that hopefully will support this deficit. The anticipated year-end balance is a little less negative than it was in December. So I'm anticipating a year-end balance of negative $227,832. But as you'll see on the next slide, I anticipate some additional sources of funding that will bring that balance back into the black. We don't have any final word on these sources yet, but it's pretty likely that we're going to get them. I just don't have final numbers yet. So we did apply for circuit breaker extraordinary relief. We won't know until the first 2 weeks of May. We submitted the claim. I'm anticipating that we're going to get 75% of what we submitted over the threshold, which would be about $136,000. It's based on all of the claims that were submitted by districts within the state. So they're looking at all of those claims right now to be able to identify a percentage that we're due back as a reimbursement because of our extraordinary costs in out-of-district tuitions. And this is just for tuition, not for transportation for students. And then the emergency assistance funds from the shelter, that's based on the $104 a day. We anticipate a payment like any day now, so we're hoping that that payment is going to approximate about $119,760. That's through the end of March. We expect the second payment coming in at the end of August, which wouldn't be applicable to this fiscal year, but that funding is supposed to be identified in a state grant line item that we can use for the purpose of expenses to support students at the shelter. So I anticipate that those two things should come through, keeping the fingers crossed. If not, it might be slightly different. But if in fact they come through as anticipated now, we're looking at a year-end balance of $28,364.
Which is pretty tight.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. In terms of revolving accounts, right now, the balance in the revolving accounts that we have is just over $1 million. We have budgeted to use $186,837 in the previous slides. So we will have some, but some of those programs obviously are self-sustaining, like the school lunch program and the staff program, where the majority of those funds are. They're used for supporting those programs ongoing. In terms of special revenue grants, you can see the balance in our grant accounts at this point is about $241,000. That includes the two, the McKinney-Vento grant that we have and the emergency homeless support grant that we got this year as well.
And at this point, we're expecting to fully expend all but $5,000 of Title I funds out of those grants.
Yes. Yeah, so our current Title I grant for FY25 is funded at 305, has $11,184. We're expecting that we'll have $5,000 of that left over because of math employee that supports math and is charged to that grant was hired mid-year. And so there's some funding left over there that we can carry over. But the rest of them we do anticipate will be spent before the end of the year. When we get to circuit breaker and stabilization funds, these are the balances that you see at this point. I will note, as you're aware, we're using $125,000 out of this bed stabilization fund to support this current fiscal year. We also have funding from that, which we'll get to support next fiscal year. And the circuit breaker amount that you see there, also, we're going to be using the $89,898 in circuit breaker, so that will come off of the balance there. It's already applied here. It's part of that $214,000. And then it's a balance in our gift account, $42,760 for other programs, for proposed enhancements, for scholarships, for field trips and special events and other activities. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Let's try this warm up a little bit.
Quick one. I don't know if it's probably an Ingrid and Miriam question. Assuming we do have funds left over in the amount of $28,000 at the close of the school year, understanding that we cannot put those in a piggy bank, what's the plan? Can we talk about putting some small modicum of money back into the sped account? Can we purchase some curriculum materials?
Yeah, I think we would probably come back to the school committee with recommendations on that. So remember, when we developed the budget, we cut out all of the capital items. So technology for teacher laptop replacement, Chromebook replacement that are past due. They'll be 7 years old. So we talk about doing some capital purchasing before the end of the year. We could also consider prepaying some special education outpatient tuitions with whatever money is left, which could draw down what we were projecting to use out of stabilization next year. So yeah, I think the committee could make those decisions. So you're right, if we don't spend that money by June 30th, it goes back to the town for free cash. So typically, transparently, we talk with the town about we could also prepay some of the math tuition and math curriculum program, but we talk to the town in years like this about pre-funding some costs that we weren't able to include in the budget.
Just a question on the balance in the 3,000 series. Are we, does that include expected McKinney-Vento reimbursements or not? Yeah.
It does not yet include
Okay.
the expected McKinney-Vento reimbursements.
Okay. Do those usually come in July or August?
Well, so we got a payment in March, but we didn't actually, we accrued a payment in March, but we got the grant money up front on the emergency homeless grant. And so anything that we got towards the teachers, we already got up front. So that gets deducted. So our $104 a day gets calculated based on the number of days, but then the amount got deducted because we got the money up front.
But is that
But you're
separate
talking
from transportation?
Oh, for transportation,
Like the cost sharing to other districts?
right, so that money's gonna come in at $104 a day.
No, she's talking about the reimbursement for the transportation that was not included in the $104 a day. So the state has emergency funds for reimbursing for homeless transportation.
Oh,
We, so the emergency access to those funds was originally set only for students that are placed in hotels. And they could get immediate reimbursement for their costs. Otherwise, it was, you submitted the claim at the end of the year and we received it the following May. We've been advocating, because we have a large number of students being transported now, that they can reconsider that, and they've said that they are willing to look at emergency reimbursement for those funds. So I think you projected out about 45,000 by the end of the year.
From now until the end of the school year, we're probably gonna spend an additional $45,000. We've already spent probably close to that.
Yeah.
And the money that comes in, if they do reimburse us, if it comes in after the school year, and we've been talking with the town to have that money appropriated back to
Okay.
the schools.
Great.
Thanks,
So next, for my report, we have, so at our last school committee meeting, we had the public hearing on the budget. We presented to the school committee a budget request of 4.59% increase over fiscal 2025. We talked through extensively at that time. The original level service budget for the Norfolk schools was over 10%, a 10% increase. The town does not have that kind of revenue available. They had us budgeted at 4%. That was over $1 million of reductions that the subcommittee has worked through to bring the budget down to a reasonable number. We presented the 4.59% request to the advisory board. Again, the town budget was not balanced at that. They have had a significant shortfall. They have been trying to work to address some of the difference between our proposed budget and what the town has, and they could get to about 4.3. They've asked us to collaboratively work to try to bring our ask down so that we can go into town meeting with a balanced budget. So the budget subcommittee met yesterday. What that impact would be for us would be about another close to $90,000 of reductions that we have to make. We worked really hard on trying to identify additional reductions that would not directly impact classroom teaching and instruction, as well as curriculum materials. So we identified another series of reductions that would bring the budget in alignment with what the town has budgeted, which is sort of splitting the difference between our 4.6 and their 4.0 to try to get to 4.3. If the school committee votes those changes and we're at 4.3, the town will be presenting a balanced budget on the town meeting floor. The recommendations that we worked through as a budget subcommittee is summarized in the budget sheet, but I'm just going to highlight. We, as Marion mentioned, we have about $5,000 we're projecting remaining in the Title I grant. We'd like to roll that over to next year to offset part of the cost of one of our paraprofessional staffs that supports mathematics. That's what it was originally budgeted for, but it will lower that salary ask for us next year. We're reducing the professional development line by about $5,000. We're intending to do more in-district professional development next year. And we have fewer new hires, so some of that funding goes to support the mentor program. We have fewer people receiving high-level mentoring or year-one mentoring. So reducing the professional development by $5,000. Reducing committee stipends. We had looked to increase that line because we've been overspending that line the last couple of years with the curriculum committees that we've had. But next year we will be in year 2 of the ELA program. We will be adopting the math curriculum. And we think we have fewer measures, so we can reduce that. So we're going to try to level fund that instead of increasing it by the 20,000. That's $20,000. We also are going to look to reduce another 0.4 non-professional positions. We originally had 0.2. We're looking to bring that down to a total of 0.6 non-professional position reductions, as well as another 0.3 paraprofessional. We are also recommending accessing or applying another $25,000 from special ed stabilization, which, as Medora pointed out, if we end with money this year, we may not need to do. Or if we have another payment in August, we may be able to prepay and not draw down that money. But at this point, we're recommending budgeting. That would be $50,000 in the stabilization account. With those reductions, we are balanced at 4.3%. And it leaves us a little room because we still have to negotiate for 3%. So to make for a reasonable adjustment there. So that is what we are presenting to you to consider to vote tonight. I think we are trying really hard to work with the town. I think it's in our best interest to collaborate and go in with a balanced budget. And I do think they had to make some other position reductions to get to the 4.3. It's a tough financial year for everybody. But I think that's the best that we can do. We really can't get below that with that. We really reduced everywhere we can without impacting class sizes further or instructional core positions. So happy to take questions.
I have a question. Kind of a holistic question about both this year, last year, and next year. We have now 2 years in a row substantial funding from a one-time revenue source to balance our budget in such a fashion that it's not a level services budget. So the water level is going up and our resources are also being depleted at a rate that can't ever be replenished. I think that it is very reasonable to want to work with the town, and I think that in my now 7, 8 budget cycles, we've always been forthright as a committee, whatever the makeup is, about trying to do that. I think that it would just be remiss of us as a committee not to publicly articulate that we cannot do this again next year. There is no more money in the sped stabilization fund to bring a balanced budget forward without, it would be classroom, it would be significant educational impact next year without these available resources. So going into that with our eyes wide open, I guess what sort of, from a perspective budgeting going into next year, because I know that's always at the forefront of what you're thinking about.
Yeah, and it is difficult, and we were very transparent about that last year, that we were utilizing one-time funds, and that is a stopgap solution that leaves you with a double deficit the following year. And so the town was well aware of that. The town clearly has a revenue problem, and they're well aware of that. It isn't sustainable going into the future. I think the advocacy on the state side to try to increase Chapter 70 funding and some other sources of revenue is important. I think the town also is actively looking at how to bring additional revenue in. That's not an immediate solution, and I know there has been some discussion about not just our budget, but KP budget, Tri-County, all town budgets not being able to sustain because everyone's absorbing cuts. So if the revenue picture doesn't change, if Chapter 70 and educational funding doesn't increase and we don't see additional revenue in the town, there's going to have to be other considerations. I know there's been discussion, nobody wants to hear the word override, operational override, but I know that's been discussed at the advisory board. Hopefully it doesn't get to that and other solutions come forward, but it isn't sustainable. We are talking in this budget proposal about $75,000 of stabilization, just to balance after $1 million of cuts. So, I think it's important to have that conversation for the community and the public to know that this is going to be the second year where one-time revenue is used to balance, and that feels dwindling. It's not a long-term solution.
And this would leave 50,000 in the stabilization fund?
50,000, which is not enough to cover the cost of a tuition.
I know. It defeats the purpose of having a fund.
Except for it leaves it open, which might allow us to put revenue in this year if we have additional money, or if funding comes in from the state in August, not to, because we're appropriating or approving the use, but we're not actually taking it out until we get to the point where we're paying the bill.
Okay.
So you can see the money in the stabilization, the 125, we haven't drawn that down yet. We're planning to, but if the situation changed, we may not need to apply that next year, that 75.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think my goal is just to make sure we, as a committee, are discussing the fact that, yes, our local schools budget is one of the largest budgets, if not the largest budget, in town. Education is inherently expensive. It is a very large proportion of what the town is spending. It is appropriate relative to the size of our school district. I mean, and that it can be a very challenging conversation to have. In my opinion, I'm happy to work with the town. I am sorry to see continued use of one-time funds. I'm sorry to see reductions in positions and in professional development and in things that don't impact immediately classroom instruction, but do have a long-term cumulative effect on the quality of the education that we're providing in the school district. So I just think that it's important for everyone, both on the committee and in the community at large, whatever your relationship to the school system is. Whether you're like me and next year you won't have any kids in the school system, whether you have kids who might be starting in a few years, whether you've lived here for 40 years, it's important to understand the value that the district does provide to the community and that it can't sustain quality educational services if we continue to start chipping away, because there's no more room to cut until you start cutting really significant, I think substantially important educational aspects of the budget.
And I appreciate you saying this, because, or what you just said, just because, like you said, apart from just using the one-time funds, there's only so many positions you can cut, and those positions are incredibly valuable. But like next budget cycle, if we're faced with the same situation, we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of like cutting positions that have immediate impacts, whereas like the ones that we have been cutting, yes, they're incredibly important, but it might not be felt for a year or two, and then you really start to kind of, cut at the what makes a quality education, what makes our schools, desirable and what we're proud of. So it's a shame. I don't have a solution, obviously. I wish I think everybody does.
I think the budget subcommittee worked really hard to try to identify a reasonable strategy to balance the budget for this year, knowing that this is a one-year strategy, following another really difficult year. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's really critical that we're transparent and open with the community, and people don't think this is a budget that is a level service budget. We're over $1 million away from the level service budget.
Piggybacking off of that, what we had with like the meeting of the advisory council, where we kind of reiterated about how last year, just remembering that we utilized the one-time funds, when in reality we're looking at a 4.3. It's in reality what, a
2.2, I think, Mary, right?
Something like that, just based, and plus using another one-time funds.
Right.
Really probably closer to 0%. So
Yeah, that's a good point.
it's not
So
really much.
when we're
place to go.
talking about a 4.59% increase that we presented at that last meeting, it's actually only 2.2% over what we spent this year, because the one-time funds are not in the bottom line of our budget. So, and we've talked before about it costs on average 3% to go from 1 year to 1 year. So we're actually below again, which is why you're seeing cuts.
And last year, we did reiterate to, the advisory council, just remember, we're utilizing the one-time funds. So next year when we come in higher, we need to be mindful of it, but, there's only so much everyone can do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's not
I appreciate so much the work that the budget subcommittee did. Having experienced that in years past in challenging times during the early days of COVID, everybody thought we were gonna have no money forever. It was, it's really challenging, and it can become, it's a tense conversation across all of the municipal departments we have in town. And it's a challenge for the select board, it's a challenge for the advisory committee, it's a challenge for us, it's a challenge for DPW, it's a challenge for KP. And I appreciate the athletic was wrapped up a month ago, and here you all are continuing to work on it, so I certainly appreciate the time.
Yeah, I mean, we had some creative ideas for generating more revenue that didn't work out, so that was too bad, and so we had to kind of go back to the drawing board.
I think that a couple times, several
Yeah.
rounds. And it's not a question of if next year, I mean, this is what we face next year. So, things change at the state level.
That
We
could
can
help.
hope, a lot of things happening in tandem. Did you say that the original was to get to 4, but the 0.3 was a compromise with the
Yes.
town?
Yeah, the
Okay.
town originally had us budgeted a 4% increase, and even at that, there was a shortfall, a pretty significant one
Okay.
on the town side. So all departments went back, made further reductions, and they compromised with us. They tried to find,
Right.
split the difference and try to find some additional revenue and access to meet halfway.
Be halfway, yes.
So
So-
it will be a balanced budget?
It will be a
at
balanced
town
budget,
with
yes.
the 4.2.
That's my understanding, yes.
I'm just hoping all that advocacy hearing around the Commonwealth, I did dial into some of that meeting today. And this is a story happening throughout the
Everywhere.
state, everywhere. And overrides around towns are failing, and it's not because people don't believe in education or they don't care about kids, it's just people can't afford it because the system supporting the schools right now is broken. And so we're kind of this product of this broken formula and broken system that needs to be addressed and fixed. But I was impressed with the comments I heard today during that meeting, hearing that various school committees are submitting similar things, and that the schools are really trying to make themselves be heard. The Massachusetts Association of Superintendents, also
But a lot of people
Teachers
led the hearings
Association.
testifying, so.
A lot of people are kind of joining forces to highlight this, so I'm really hoping that something comes of it.
And I mean, it's a bigger story, as you said. Educational costs have been rising much more rapidly. So you're looking at private non-public tuitions going up 10, 14%. We're looking at 2%, 3% increases. So that's part of the transportation costs have gone up significantly. So all of those factors, the costs are rising faster than the funding is. So one other thing I just wanted to point in out on the budget summary, because we didn't discuss it in depth at the last time, is just the COLA budgeted for our paraprofessional and all other staff members. So again, the teachers' COLA is governed by the collective bargaining agreement. School committee approves the COLA for all other staff. What we have done in the past, we've had typically a 2% COLA increase for non-union staff. We've tried to align more closely with the town. The town is budgeting a 1.5% COLA for all of their support staff. However, the town salary schedules have a lot more steps than ours do. So what we tried to do is balance that out. Most people in the town side are getting a step and a COLA increase. So we budgeted the 1.5 for non-professional staff that are on salary matrix, and then a higher COLA increase for people at top staff because they're not getting a step increase. So that's 3.25, which is similar to what the teachers are receiving. So we wanted to highlight that because I know we didn't talk in depth, but the school committee does set that as well. So we're looking for a vote to approve the revised budget reductions and to move forward with the 4.3 budget ask with reflecting these changes to town meeting on the Wednesday.
So moved.
Second that.
Further discussion? No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next thing in packet is the quarterly bullying report. By policy, I provide the committee with an update on the number of bullying reports and investigations that have been conducted each quarter. Last quarter at Freeman Kennedy, there was one report received of alleged bullying, which was fully investigated in accordance with the district bullying prevention and intervention plan and policies. This particular incident was did not meet the criteria for bullying, and we followed the disciplinary policy and code of conduct, and appropriate measures were taken. There were no reports of bullying at the H. Olive Day School, and obviously we continue to provide comprehensive instruction in anti-bullying through Second Step and through Open Circle. These numbers continue to trend down. They did spike after COVID, so we are seeing some positive changes in the amount of discipline and bullying reports we've received. Happy to take any questions that people may have.
We skipped that.
I skipped what?
FICA.
Sorry, that was not intentional. I'll go back to the BICO budget. So we are a member of the BICO Collaborative. That is a special education collaborative. There are 17 member districts. The programs are housed primarily in public schools, although we do have a couple of programs that are in private settings. As a member district, when we outplace students, if they go to the collaborative, we get a discounted tuition as a member district. And per Mass law, we are required to provide the school committee with a BICO budget annually. The budget has been certified at our last board meeting and is balanced for fiscal 2026. So meaning what we anticipate to take in through tuitions will offset the operating costs. So that's just information. Happy to take any questions. Next on the agenda, so per, again, state law, the school committee is responsible for appointing certain positions within the district. Business manager, superintendent, special education director, and school nurses. And our current special education director, Dr. Anna Tupper, her contract expires June 30th. Anna is looking to retire in a year, so I am recommending to the committee that we engage in a one-year contract with Dr. Anna Tupper as the special education director. She does an outstanding job. She's very committed. She's done a great job building and strengthening the in-district programs we have, which has been huge in terms of providing strong services to students as well as managing educational costs. The recommended salary increase is consistent with non-union staff per the school committee discussion, so at 3.25. What we are recommending is reducing the number of days of her contract. This is one of the areas that we initially generated some savings in. So from 220 to 205. So reducing the length of the contract and the per diem rate accordingly. We will have to shift some summer responsibilities for summer programs and some other things within the administrative team. So all the other terms are the same as they have been in the past. They're pretty standard. As far as sick days, personal leave, none of that has changed. So I am recommending the school committee vote to appoint Dr. Tupper for a one-year position as the Director of Special Education and Student Services with Norfolk Public Schools.
So moved.
Any discussion?
I only said that it's for 1 year.
I know. We were lucky to keep her for one more year, so that's a good thing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, I just wanted to update the committee on where we are with our comprehensive health and physical education curriculum review. As we talked about at our last meeting, we are working on this as a regional team with our partner districts, Rentham and Plainville, as well as King Philip. The health standards are written in grade level bands, so we feed the middle school the 6 to 8 standards. Obviously, we have to make sure there's vertical continuity in what we're teaching at 6th grade so that all of the kids entering 7th and 8th have continuity of programming. So as a first step, it's our typical review process. What we've done is to take all the new comprehensive health frameworks, and we've had 3 meetings so far with the health educators, the director of wellness, and administrators from all 3 districts. And what we've been doing is what we call a gap analysis. Anytime new frameworks come out, we start with the revised frameworks and we go through to see what are we currently teaching now, where is it being taught, what materials are we using to teach that, and then we identify where the gaps are. So what things do we not have currently as part of our curriculum and what stands out. The next thing that we do is we go through and identify what are the priority standards. So obviously in any framework, ELA, math, every standard doesn't have the same weight. Some standards are critical for building upon in the future, essential skills, others are more minor. So we go through, after we did the gap analysis, we went through by practice, there's by section of the new health frameworks and identified what are the priority things that essential skills kids need to know and be able to do as they exit each grade level. So we've gotten that far. We're really focused right now on the nutrition and balanced eating, physical activity and fitness, physical health and hygiene, and some standards under personal safety. Primarily health and water safety, bike safety, those kinds of safety standards. And what we are going to be recommending, and we'll come to the school committee with more detailed recommendations probably in June. We expect that at each grade level, K through 6, there'll be about 10 to 12 health lessons. That's similar to what we've done in the past. It's about 1 per month that would be taught within the physical education wellness program. Again, those lessons will focus on nutrition, health, personal safety, as we talked about earlier, like the bike and water safety, bike safety. What the health educator, our physical education staff is now doing is looking at those priority standards, identifying which 12 lessons would belong in kindergarten, what would belong in grade 1, what would it, and how that would look vertically going through grade 6. They're looking at the current program that we have, and they're also comparing it to newly curated resources from the Department of Ed. Health Smart is one of the curriculums that we're looking at, and they're looking to see which standards are better, which resources better present those standards and are better developed and more current. What we will come back to the school committee with in June is a recommended curriculum, so you'll see which standards we're focusing on by grade level, what the lessons would be, and what materials we'd recommend using, and would come to the committee with a recommendation for adopting those. After that, we'll move into looking at some of the other practices and standards, which talk more about the drug awareness, which we want to involve our DARE officer. A lot of that education falls within DARE, as well as some of the mental health and wellness standards and other personal safety standards. So we'll work on that through probably the fall and expect to come with recommendations to the committee on those standards probably by December. So that's where we are right now. The team's been great. They put a lot of work in. I think they're excited about looking at some new material. There are some things that we have good content and that they really like. So I think it might end up being a recommendation of different resources for different standards, but we will have a full recommendation for you to consider in June.
So it's not something anticipated to roll out until, I guess, fall of '26, kind of?
I think we would roll out the nutrition and all of these standards, the physical fitness and wellness, in the fall. So we'll recommend the
Okay.
resources to the committee in June. If
Okay.
you approve and adopt them, we're going to have to look for some grant funding. We don't have a budget line item for the health curriculum, but we would implement those standards immediately. We would make a recommendation in probably December for the other content, and once approved, we would continue to implement the rest of the frameworks.
Okay. The current,
But it will come to the committee like all adoptions
Yeah.
to review and approve, and they'll be available for parents as well.
okay. The current health standards as they're taught, how many lessons are those usually?
So when we
adding
did the
on?
last review, we had said about 20% or 1 or 2 lessons out of every 8. So it's proportionally about what
okay.
we're doing now.
Okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
if we were
It-
restructuring the whole physical education. to-
No, we're really getting back to, like during COVID, that practice shifted a little bit because we were doing some virtual instruction, and so we had staff changes. I'm sure you probably experienced that. So we were less consistent because also the frameworks were changing about dedicating those 1 to 2 lessons out of every 8 to health.
Gotcha.
So we're going back to the practice that we had
Okay.
with a more sequenced curriculum and hopefully stronger resources. Some of, like I said, some of what we have is really good. Some of the nutrition information is dated, and we need better resources for that. Vicki, you want to add anything? Because Vicki's been working on this hard with the
I think
team as
that,
well.
like you kind of mentioned, I think one of the nice things is that the standards are a lot more richer than they were before. Last time they were written was 1999. So a lot of the updates that needed to happen, like really, because a lot of information was so not relevant to how we do view nutrition nowadays and how we kind of view like health and safety and everything. So I think that has been a really nice shift. I think the collaboration between the 4 districts has also been a great opportunity for our PE and teachers and the health teacher from Rentham to kind of talk and unpack like what do the standards really mean, how do they look like in the 1st grade versus the 2nd grade versus the 4th grade, you know, and to really look at that spiraling component, because our goal is ultimately to make sure that we do have that alignment. So when our kids leave 6th grade and enter KP Middle, there is a vertical alignment, and all our districts are coming in with like pretty similar experiences, all our kids, you know, so when they do reach 7th grade. So that has been really great work to kind of be part of, and kind of echoing what you said, I really want to give kudos to our PE teachers here. They have really dove into it and have been such great partners in this work, and they're very passionate about what they do, of course, so it's been some really wonderful recommendations, and I'm like really looking forward to rolling out the first parts of this next fall. I think it'll be richer for our kids.
And as Vicki said, like the old frameworks are from 1999, so the digital safety is new. Online safety, making sure kids have more physical activity and set physical fitness goals, like all of those things are new to the framework. So
I'm trying to ring a bell. Aren't there some standards currently that are from pre-2020?
The last time the frameworks were fully revised was there something, I think there was some updates in 2011.
Yeah, there were like.
But the
I
full
thought 2019
revision,
there was some updates.
there might have been some updates, but the
Yeah.
full revision,
Mhm.
the last time it was fully revised was 1999.
We talked about, let's see, for June, they're probably more applicable to December. Recommended curriculum and community input, seeking community input, feedback, having Q&A, things like that. Where do you see that fitting in for the June and the December milestones?
I think once we get a little further with the standards, all the materials that we bring in terms of the physical fitness and the nutrition standards,
Yeah.
we'll present to the school committee. Our goal is still to have everything available and accessible to the public online. We haven't heard much concern over those standards. I do think that in every curriculum review, we try to engage parental feedback. We send parent surveys. We would do curriculum nights. I imagine even with the nutrition standards, we'll probably host some sort of curriculum evening for people to learn more about the new frameworks. Would love feedback from the public on the best way to organize those meetings, because we don't have a high turnout for some of these. So our wellness director has been working really hard to bring in Stewards for Children for a parent workshop night that's coming up. I think it's on April 14th. And we, as of the other day, only had 2 registrations. So
Yeah, we'll still offer it.
yeah, we want to offer it, but I'm
Yeah.
looking for input on whether there's a better format
Yeah.
that would work better for people to get some of the information.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I'm sure that would be part of the survey, is what's the best way for us to get
Yeah.
information and feedback.
Okay, so that'll be part of like that'll be part of the kind of the curriculum development process,
Yep.
right? Yeah, okay, cool.
I just had a question. I know how sometimes you will address a social studies standard in ELA or a social studies standard in SEL. Do you envision keeping the health standards in health or addressing some of the standards across disciplines?
So some of the standards within the frameworks are they're in different content. So
Okay.
when we look at anything, like I just mentioned, some of the health standards for drug safety are in the DARE program.
Yeah.
They're not in the health curriculum. But we envision having a map that will show people where standards are covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of interdisciplinary
Yeah.
opportunities, like there's a lot of standards around like media safety. And
Yeah.
we do that through our digital citizenship lessons, which
Yeah,
are
and
already
the
very
library
well
media
formed, and
program.
we have a schedule, so like we wouldn't necessarily duplicate, like, because we only have so many lessons, you know what I mean? So I feel like that would probably stay with our digital curriculum, so if that was your question, right?
Yeah,
So-
kind of
so-
all the topics.
So
listed
part of
that
our
would just be
mapping
in
has
health.
been kind of just taking a look at what we are already teaching and where it is, and then kind of identifying, because there's also some standards that are purely like the nutrition ones mentioned, that are really need like a standalone class, and
Right,
then
they're
we need to
not
have like
embedded
a lesson
anywhere.
on nutrition, that's not gonna fit in SEL or ELA, you know what I mean?
But there are many standards around personal safety, around regulating emotions, setting goals that are actually part of the open circle
Yeah.
or a second
Right.
step. So we would be sharing where those are. I know there's concerns about sex education. There is mass law around parental notification. I do think that it looks like most of those standards are going to remain at the middle school, although the changing bodies unit that we've always taught in 5th grade will likely remain here. But all of those things are things that we also as a policy committee were discussing. So parents will know what is being taught and where it's being taught, and that would be available. Any other questions?
I'm just going to mention some of that, so like, I know we talked earlier, I'm sorry, about enhancing like the curriculum website. So I am like continuing, it's not, I haven't published it yet, but I've been uploading like our AOA scope and sequence on that, so I'm working on that. So to have it hopefully released for September too, just to have them, so parents can say like, what are we teaching in math, what are we teaching in ELA, music, like, so I've been gathering, kind of trying to build that up too, and I'll share that once it's ready.
Great. I think that would be so helpful for people, because I know it's been great this year, including the ELA lessons in Wednesday's words. But then sometimes like a month will go by and I won't even remember like where it was.
Yeah.
So just having it in that centralized place, I think really would be so helpful to parents who are getting lots of emails about not only school but activities and everything, just to know that there's one
Then they can go
centralized place
Adrian's
they
been
can go.
supporting me with that, with building that, so yeah.
Yeah.
But I did wanted to let you know that, like, that feedback has been heard, like, I've been working on it.
That's great.
And then last for me tonight is an update on the shelter. So we currently have, our current enrollment has gone down since the last I reported. We're at about 47 students. We also, of the 47, we have many students that have approved releases, and we are expecting significant movement over the next couple of weeks. I think there's almost 30 of those approved releases. So we're watching that closely. We have seen an increase in McKinney-Vento transportation requests. As Miriam said, we're projecting it'll probably be close to 80,000 by the end of the year, another 45,000 between now and June. And we are advocating for that emergency relief and emergency reimbursement for that. I heard from Bessie that they are going to be reaching out with another opportunity to submit claims. So hopefully that's coming in the next few weeks, and then again at the end of the year.
So the transportation cost and reimbursement, is that solely based on busing to and from the shelter, or does that
No.
include students who have chosen to stay in district that have moved out of the shelter?
That is a good question. So it's actually neither of those.
Okay.
So under the McKinney-Vento law, if a child is homeless, they have a right to remain in their school of origin. And the district where they're residing and the school of origin district share the cost of transportation.
Okay.
What we're seeing happen at the shelter is we have a lot more students coming in that are Massachusetts students coming from other towns or cities. So if a child is living in Fall River, they're homeless, they're here, they have a right to stay in Fall River. They never enrolled with us, but we own half the cost of transporting back to Fall River.
Okay.
Okay, so these are all, when we're talking about McKinney-Vento transportation, what we've seen is a rise in the number of students entering the shelter that are being transported back to another town or city in Massachusetts that we are cost sharing.
Gotcha.
And that's where we're advocating for emergency immediate reimbursement for those costs, because they're going to be close to $90,000 by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And again, it was originally developed, this emergency reimbursement, to offset the cost for districts that were hosting hotels and they were unbudgeted students. So they put that in place. It wasn't extended to larger shelter sites. So they are working with us to make that available to the town.
When do you expect to have kind of a?
What they've agreed to do the funding, we just haven't been able to submit a claim yet. Because
Gotcha.
the first claim went out in December, we didn't have any yet, and now we have a lot. So I think the next claim we'll be submitting in the next few weeks.
Okay.
And then probably again at the end of the school year. The regular reimbursement from McKinney-Vento was a year out. So if we didn't have the emergency, we would be able to file this, but we would not receive the funds until the following May.
And is the emergency reimbursement going to cover everything, or is there like?
It's fully funded.
It is.
It's just a matter of the time
Yeah.
when we
I
get
just didn't know if it was
funds
like
back.
a 75% sort of
Yeah,
thing.
no, it is fully funded. That's all I have tonight.
Moving to policy.
Well, I'm solo tonight, but we have proposed policy JJE as exhibit number 9, student fundraising activities. Back again. So after some feedback, there's been some additional language. I can see it.
You're very
White
right.
copy, I can see it on my screen. Trying to address some of the additional feedback we got, changing some language to activities that publicly reward or recognize individuals, classrooms, or grades for performance are also not permitted, which is an add from the last iteration of this that we saw. And then in addition, students should not be directly involved in the sale of products. So I think that phrasing it that way creates something that covers, I think, some of the specific issues that were raised in our last meeting, including, say, for example, you shouldn't be rewarded for individually running a certain number of laps at the fun run, or any other thing that I'm losing track with what the, as my kids get older, I'm not involved in all the fundraising. So I think it creates sort of a net that covers a lot of the areas of concern that have been raised up until this point around different fundraising activities.
And we changed the language. It had said students should not be directly involved in monetary transactions, but we shifted that because we have events like the book fair where students might come in and buy books. It was really intended that we weren't doing magazine fund drives where students were collecting money. So we shifted that to not prohibit participation in a book fair or things like that, but that students would not be directly involved in selling or marketing products. So those are the only changes from last time.
So I need a motion to accept the student fundraising activities policy, file JJE. Second.
Second.
Any further discussion on it?
I am all set talking about this one.
All right, no, I think it will address some of the issues we saw this year, so thank you for putting the work into it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Budget subcommittee.
I've got nothing, we went through that. It didn't sound that way.
Covered that one.
Building committee.
The building committee continues to wait on the outcome of an application to MSBA.
Which was submitted Monday,
All
so,
digits crossed on all appendages, so.
yeah. It's open.
King Philip, I have nothing really to report. It was a very low-key meeting yesterday. The National Honor Society came in and talked about some of the great work they've been doing. They put on a fashion show to raise money, and
I thought, the way you said it, I thought you meant at the meeting. Sounds much more exciting than our meetings.
fashion show. They had a school film festival, so there's exciting things happening over at KP. Liaison updates.
We've got, not, join in for, Norfolk Community League. They have the bunny breakfast coming up, but other than that, not a whole lot.
I can do CPAC and PTO. I went to their Casino Royale event on Saturday, which was a lot of fun, and they did a really good job raising money for the schools, doing good things. They had like fake gambling set up, so you could go and cash in chips for all the tables and then put your winnings in for raffles, and everyone had a really good time, and I think they did a great job raising money for the schools, and their plan was to raise $10,000 to build a sensory path. They haven't come out with the total amount raised yet, but there were lots of people buying more chips and putting in for raffle prizes. So
And
I
the
think it
silent
was-
auction.
The silent auction,
Yes.
right? You won something, right?
Spent too much money on the side.
So I think it was a really successful event. So thank you for them and their support. New items, we have a school partnership renewal from Norfolk Recreation. And we all know how much Norfolk Recreation does for the community. It has direct ties into the school. And they partner with us so well, such a wide variety of activities. And they do the outdoor program in the summer, offer courses in school, partnering with our teachers. Like my son's in a coding class right now, so they are looking to renew their partnership with us. So looking for a motion to approve their renewal application.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Looking forward to continuing to partner with them. Similar, we have a renewal application from the King Philip Music Association. They'd like to continue partnering with us. I think the love of music really starts at the elementary level at a very young age in our town and continues to grow. And I know our advanced band won a gold medal. Yeah,
Big happenings on Saturday.
That's
right.
So, really contributing to students and their love of music. So they are looking for an approval for their renewal application.
So moved, or move to renew the application.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And you should have two sets of meetings in front of you. The first one we will do is the public hearing minutes from March 11th. You all have a chance to look them over. I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes for our public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Looking for a motion to approve minutes from our March 11th school committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then I have here that the next school committee meeting is scheduled for May 20th. Good job, meeting. Anyone have anything else they want to add? No, that was a good date. Okay, anything else anyone wants to discuss? Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.